she lent me a book, The Apostolic Fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I read the Apostolic Fathers and read the history of the church, I became convinced that the Catholic Orthodox position on theology was correct.
Interesting.
And so it was through the readings of the early fathers and the history of the church,
Yeah,
that, especially the two things, the view of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, and the view of a governance structure composed of deacons, priests, and bishops. Because you see that in the earliest writings after the Bible was written. St. Ignatius of Antioch, St. Justin the Martyr, St. Irenaeus of Lyon, all those early Christian writers wrote extensively on all those topics. And these are topics which Protestants later would come to have a vehement disagreement with the Catholic Church on.
So it was the nature of a hierarchy that convinced you?
No, just the constant tradition from the beginning to now.
Uh-huh.
So those were things that you were able to see very clearly in the writings of the early church fathers.
Right.
So I don't know if you've read some of the writings from the early church outside the Bible, like St. Ignatius of Antioch and St. Justin the Martyr.
No, I haven't, I'm afraid.
And yeah, so they're all written in the 2nd century. 107 to 150 AD is St. Irenaeus of Lyon's a little later, probably about 170 AD, I think is what they say his dates are.
Right. So I'm aware that much of the Bible has no heritage earlier than the 1st or 2nd century, certainly post the period of Jesus's lifetime.
Oh yeah, well the Gospels are post-resurrection chronicles, like they're post-resurrection retrospectives on the life of Jesus, right?
Yeah. So in that case,
that's how they're written.
Yeah. Yes. In fact, they don't even claim to be written by observers, do they? They say that they're according to the four named.
Mark and Luke
Yeah.
weren't directly observers anyway, right?
Yeah.
Luke followed Paul. He's probably the most historian of them. Who other than a historian would record that Quirinius was governor of Syria, right? And stuff like that. Matthew was more looking at it in light of the Old Testament, and everyone, they're all a little different, right?
Yeah. And John was very much
very theological.
Well, I would have said very much a marketing man.
I'd say that's more Mark.
Really? Oh, okay.
John was taking the information and putting it in a theological perspective, rather than necessarily. And John is likely the last gospel that was written.
Yes.
And so we don't know. So, there's a lot of the history is there, but there's a lot of things that are lost to history too.
Yeah. So can we look? We've got an audience member here. Hi, Rob. Thanks for watching. We've got Rob is making the point that the named authors of the Gospels weren't necessarily the real authors. They got named after these people rather than written by these people.
The earliest we have is we do have a fragment of the Gospel of John that was dated to around 100 AD.
Yeah. So there you've got another problem, haven't you? Because if it was dated, I don't know whether that's the earliest of all the Gospels, but certainly the earliest of John, If it was dated 100 years after the
so
event,
70 years after.
Sorry.
So that'd be 70 years after.
Yeah. So it's another generation.
Yeah, but that's a copy of a fragment of a papyrus that was a copy of something. So when did the original that was found in Egypt? So it would have had to get to Egypt. It was probably written in Greece. So there was fairly good communication back and forth there, but how fast would that go and stuff like that? Historians have been debating this for decades.
I have. Yeah.
So I'm no expert at it, and there's varying different opinions depending on which historian and which.
Yeah, I didn't really want to get down this rabbit hole anyway too far, because
no, exactly.
I'm not an expert, neither are you. So
no.